Do you remember the name of the author and the title of the book that inspired Orson Welles' panic broadcast of 1938? Thousands of radio listeners thought that an actual alien invasion was underway. Well, in our last adventure, I mentioned I had struck one of my bucket list items off of the list when we visited Biggar, Saskatchewan, on our trip to Purdue. Well, I'm lucked out again. I've managed to strike another bucket list item off on a recent trip out to White Rock, BC. Visited one of my favorite used bookstores called Stillman Books, located in White Rock. And Terry's a great guy. He runs a store. He's been in the business a very long time. And we got talking about books and bookbinding and that I do bookbinding and repairs. And he said, "Oh, I've got a book you should look at. You might be interested in." So he went in the back and brought out a signed copy of a book by H.G. Wells. That's the one. That H.G. Wells. Created War of the Worlds, The Time Machine, and many, many other titles. He's a very prolific writer. And H.G. Wells kind of got me into science fiction when I was quite young. The Time Machine, of course, being one of them. But there was a few other authors I really enjoyed, as a teenager. One was Jules Verne, who wrote 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. He wrote that in 1870. And Verne imagined many things such as the fax machine, cell phones, submarines, in a time when, who would think of a fax machine in the 1870s? Well, Jules Verne did. Read a lot of his books. Really got me into science fiction. And also Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, of course, most famously known for writing the Sherlock Holmes stories. But Doyle was very prolific as well. He wrote a series of science fiction books by featuring the character Professor Challenger, and one of those was The Lost World, which famously went on to become the inspiration for Michael Crichton's Jurassic Park, and of course all those blockbuster movies. So science fiction's been around for a while, and been inspired by some of those early writers. Anyway. The War of the Worlds. It's a very famous story, and one of the most famous renditions of War of the Worlds was when Orson Welles performed it on his Mercury Theatre on the Air, the old school radio plays back in the day. And Halloween was coming up, and they wanted to do something special, so they got a hold of the story, and Welles thought, well, how can we make this really exciting and different? And he thought, well, we'll do it in the form of a news bulletin style program, so that to reporters, reporting on what's happening. Well, what was happening is that aliens were invading the Earth in Grosvenor's Mill, New Jersey. Now, they'd set up the program at the start that this was a radio program, not to be alarmed, etc., etc. Well, lots of people didn't tune in and missed that part, and they created a huge panic all across the U.S. And in the town of Grosvenor's Mill itself, there was actual just mass hysteria, and it was a big deal. Orson Welles and his troupe got into a lot of trouble and had some explaining to do. Some people think that Mr. Orson Welles did that on purpose. But he denied it for many, many, many years, and but it made him famous, and he went on, of course, to a great film career. Anyways, the book I purchased from Terry at Stillman Books is called A Short History of the World, and it's one of H.G. Wells' nonfiction titles, but it's signed by him. And I've looked for signed H.G. Wells books for many, many years. So I'd like to show it to you. Well, here it is. It's in a little bit tough shape in some ways. You can see there's some wear at the head of the spine and at the foot of the spine. There's a little tear here. Nothing too serious. We open it up and you can see that this is what we called hinged in the industry. So the board is coming loose from the text block, but I'm going to repair that. It's not a complex repair. There's an inscription up there from a previous owner at some point in time. We have a little bit of damage down here, and I'm going to fix that stuff up. But here it is. And look at that signature. Isn't that lovely? Fountain pen, beautiful, stylized. You know, they say cursive is going to be the secret code for all of us old folks here in the not too distant future. So there, H.G. Wells, bucket list item done. Well, one final fun fact about H.G. Wells for me, and the kind of thread he's had in my life all of these years. Back in grade 11, I had a great English teacher named Miss Sear, and she gave us a short story assignment. Write a short story, have it in by Monday morning. Well, being the procrastinator that I am, I left it to Sunday, so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to write about? I don't have any ideas. I thought, I know, I'll go find my H.G. Wells short stories. I'll pick the most obscure one she's never heard of. I'll borrow the plot, rewrite the story, hand it in, all's well. That's what I did. So I handed it in to Miss Sear, and we were talking, and she said, well, Barry, that's a very interesting story. Where'd you get the idea? I said, well, you know, I just kind of thought it up, and it came to me, and I wrote it. And she says, oh, yeah, you're sure now? I said, oh, yeah. Okay, so that's all she said. And the next English class we had with Miss Sear, a few days later, she says, okay, class, today we're going to talk about plagiarism. And she looked at me and smiled. So she never made me confess. She never accused me of stealing the story. She made her point. She made it very well. So, you know, end of the day, come up with your own ideas.